the most dominant category, I'm him. You only can say one other name. I don't want to hear nobody else's name. That's why I wanted to pass him up in points. I was going to fucking arrogantly say, I don't want to hear his name. But, you know, the greatest of all time, I would like to be in that conversation. But if it's not definite, see, like when you talk about Bryant and Mike, it's definite.
Shaquille O'Neal has never been impressed by reputation alone, and when he talks about all-time greatness, he draws a very hard line. To Shaq, being great isn't about highlights, popularity, or what fans argue about online. It's about dominance. Who controlled the league, who broke opponents mentally and physically, who changed how basketball had to be played just to survive them. Shaq faced legends. He played with icons. He battled the best centers, wings, and guards across eras, and most of them didn't make his inner circle, because in Shaq's world, greatness has requirements: size, skill, pressure performance, and the ability to impose your will when the game is on the line. This list isn't friendly, it isn't sentimental, and it definitely isn't up for debate. These are the players Shaquille O'Neal believes truly stand at the very top of basketball history, the ones who earned his respect, the only way Shaq recognizes it, by dominating the game when it mattered most. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Shaquille O'Neal has never been shy about who he measures himself against, and when it comes to centers, there is one name he consistently places above everyone else: Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. For Shaq, Kareem wasn't just a great player from a different era. He was the standard, the benchmark every dominant big man eventually has to confront, whether they admit it or not. What immediately separated Kareem in Shaq's eyes was longevity paired with production. Shaq dominated stretches of the league, but Kareem controlled decades, 20 seasons, 6 championships, 6 MVPs, over 38,000 career points, a scoring record that stood for nearly 40 years. And he did it without relying on brute force alone. Kareem stayed elite well into his late 30s, even as the league became faster, more physical, and more athletic. That mattered to Shaq. Shaq has often spoken about dominance in terms of imposing physical will, but Kareem dominated in a different way, through inevitability. The skyhook wasn't just unstoppable, it was repeatable. Defenders knew it was coming. Teams built entire game plans around stopping it, and it still worked for 2 decades. To Shaq, that level of reliability isn't just skill, it's mastery. There's also an uncomfortable truth Shaq has acknowledged indirectly over the years. Kareem solved problems Shaq himself sometimes wrestled with. Kareem didn't need to overpower opponents every possession. He conserved energy. He picked his moments. He played within structure without losing control of the game. That balance between efficiency and dominance is something Shaq has openly said he came to appreciate more as his career went on. Their on-court relationship adds another layer. Shaq faced Kareem's legacy constantly, even when Kareem wasn't physically on the floor. Every great center after the 1980s was measured against Kareem first. Shaq embraced comparisons to Wilt and Russell, but Kareem was different. Kareem wasn't just history. He was the modern blueprint for sustained greatness at the position. When Shaq joined the Lakers, that comparison became unavoidable. Kareem wasn't just a name in record books. He was part of the franchise's identity, and Shaq knew that if you were going to claim the Lakers' throne, you had to acknowledge who built it. Over time, Shaq did exactly that. Not publicly at first. Shaq has always wrestled with legacy conversations, but gradually and consistently. Shaq has repeatedly placed Kareem above himself in all-time center discussions. That admission matters, because Shaq rarely places anyone above Shaq, unless he believes the resume is untouchable. Kareem's is. Championships across 2 decades, MVPs in different eras, scoring without athletic decline, dictating relevance. Another factor Shaq respects deeply is adaptability. Kareem won with Oscar Robertson in Milwaukee. He won again with Magic Johnson in Los Angeles. He adjusted from being the offensive engine to being a stabilizing force as his role evolved. Shaq has praised players who could win with different stars and under different circumstances, and Kareem did that better than almost anyone. There's also a philosophical respect. Kareem approached basketball intellectually. He studied opponents. He refined technique. He didn't rely on emotion or intimidation. For Shaq, who dominated through personality and power, Kareem represents the opposite approach, done at the highest possible level. And that contrast, rather than diminishing Kareem, elevates him. In Shaq's framework of greatness, Kareem checks every box that matters: dominance, longevity, skill, adaptability, and results. No shortcuts, no asterisks, No peak-only arguments. That's why Kareem isn't just on Shaquille O'Neal's all-time list. He's at the top of it, not because of nostalgia, not because of history books, but because even the most physically dominant center the game has ever seen recognizes that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar set a standard that still hasn't been fully matched.
Young kids today don't learn how to shoot hook shots is because everybody is so enamored with the three-point shot. So the kids, they don't want 2 points. They don't want to work with their back to the basket. That's not cool. They want to go out there in the stratosphere and shoot three-pointers.
Magic Johnson. For Shaquille O'Neal, greatness isn't just about overpowering opponents, it's about control. And when Shaq talks about control, one name comes up immediately: Magic Johnson. Magic occupies a unique place in Shaq's all-time view because he represents something Shaq deeply values, but could never replicate himself: the ability to run the entire game, not just score, not just win, but dictate pace, rhythm, confidence, and belief for everyone on the floor. What separates Magic in Shaq's eyes starts with scale. At 6 feet 9 inches, Magic was bigger than almost every guard and quicker than almost every forward. But Shaq never saw Magic as a physical mismatch merchant. He saw him as a problem solver. Magic didn't overwhelm defenses with speed or strength. He overwhelmed them with decisions. Every possession forced the defense to choose, and almost every choice was wrong. Shaq has often said that dominance can come in different forms. Magic's dominance was psychological. Teams didn't just defend him, they reacted to him. One no-look pass could shift momentum. One early push in transition could break defensive discipline. One post-up against the smaller guard could force a double team that unlocked the entire offense. For Shaq, that kind of command is just as devastating as raw power. There's also a deep Lakers connection behind Shaq's admiration. When Shaq arrived in Los Angeles, Magic's shadow still loomed large. Showtime wasn't just the style, it was an expectation. Shaq understood that Magic didn't just win championships, he defined an identity. 5 titles, 3 MVPs, Finals MVPs, at multiple positions, including famously starting at center as a rookie in the 1980 Finals. That versatility matters to Shaq, who respects players who can bend roles when the moment demands it. Magic also checks a box Shaq values more than most fans realize: pressure leadership. Shaq has often criticized players who shrink responsibility in big moments. Magic never did. Whether it was deferring to Kareem when needed or taking control when Kareem was unavailable, Magic embraced responsibility without ego. That balance, knowing when to lead loudly and when to support quietly, is something Shaq has openly praised. Another reason Magic stands high on Shaq's list is longevity of impact. Even beyond his prime, Magic's career was cut short, but his influence never was. He transformed how teams viewed size at the guard position. He made passing a weapon, not a luxury. And he proved that joy and dominance didn't have to be opposites. Shaq has always admired players who could win while making the game feel larger than the scoreboard. And Magic did that better than anyone. There's also a personal parallel. Like Shaq, Magic was a cultural force, bigger than basketball, a face of the league, someone whose presence alone changed arenas. Shaq understands the weight of that responsibility, and he respects how Magic carried it, with confidence, clarity, and results. In Shaq's all-time hierarchy, Magic Johnson isn't just the greatest point guard ever. He's proof that dominance doesn't always come from scoring titles or physical intimidation. Sometimes it comes from ownership, of teammates, of moments, and of the game itself. That's why Magic earns Shaquille O'Neal's respect at the highest level. Not because he played the game Shaq played, but because he controlled the game in a way very few ever have. Michael Jordan. For Shaquille O'Neal, greatness without dominance doesn't count. And when it comes to dominance at every level of the game, Michael Jordan sits in a category Shaq rarely questions. Shaq's respect for Jordan is rooted in one simple reality: Jordan didn't just win, he controlled eras. From the moment Jordan entered the league, everything began to tilt toward him. Defensive schemes changed, roster construction changed, psychological pressure changed. Shaq has often said that true greatness forces the league to react, and Jordan did that more completely than anyone else he ever watched or played against. What stands out most to Shaq is how Jordan combined skill with authority. Jordan wasn't the biggest, strongest, or fastest player on the floor, but when the game tightened, he became unavoidable. Shaq respects players who demand the ball in uncomfortable moments and then deliver without excuses. Jordan did that consistently, whether it was scoring 40, locking in defensively, or dictating tempo late in games. Their on-court battles only reinforced that respect. Shaq faced Jordan multiple times throughout the 1990s, including playoff matchups where Jordan made it clear whose league it was. Shaq has openly acknowledged that no matter how dominant he felt physically, Jordan always controlled the terms of the game. If Jordan decided a stretch of basketball would be played his way, there was very little anyone could do about it. Another factor Shaq values deeply is finality. Jordan didn't leave questions behind. 6 finals appearances, 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, no Game 7s in the finals. Shaq has repeatedly emphasized that closing matters, not just getting there, but finishing. Jordan's resume doesn't require explanation or defense, and that clarity earns Shaq's respect. Shaq also appreciates Jordan's approach to pressure. Jordan didn't deflect responsibility. He absorbed it. Shaq has criticized players who talk about leadership but avoid accountability when things break down. Jordan never did that. Whether the Bulls were winning comfortably or fighting through adversity, Jordan took ownership of outcomes, good or bad. There's also a shared understanding between them as cultural figures. Jordan wasn't just the best player on the court, he was the face of the league while carrying championship expectations every night. Shaq understands how heavy that burden is. He respects how Jordan never let popularity soften his competitive edge. Fame didn't dilute Jordan's hunger, it sharpened it. In Shaq's framework, Jordan represents the cleanest example of what greatness is supposed to look like. Elite skill, relentless competitiveness, and complete control when the stakes are highest. No excuses. No context required, just results. That's why Michael Jordan doesn't sit on Shaquille O'Neal's list as a debated choice. He's there because, by Shaq's standards, Jordan did everything a greatest player is supposed to do, and left nothing unfinished.
I never wanted to miss a game because it was an opportunity to prove. It was something that I felt like, the fans are there to watch me play. I want to impress that guy way up on top who probably worked his ass off to get a ticket.
Kobe Bryant. When Shaquille O'Neal talks about Kobe Bryant, the respect comes from a place few other players qualify for: shared dominance under pressure. Shaq doesn't hand out praise to players just because they were skilled or fearless. What Kobe earned was something rarer, proof that his game translated when winning required sacrifice, structure, and obsession. Shaq saw that up close, every day, during the most demanding stretch of his career. What Shaq respected first wasn't Kobe's scoring, it was Kobe's commitment to mastery. Kobe wasn't satisfied with talent. He refined footwork, he studied angles, he worked counters until defenders ran out of answers. Shaq has always separated players who rely on ability from players who engineer outcomes, and Kobe firmly belonged in the second group. Their partnership in Los Angeles revealed something important to Shaq. Kobe wanted responsibility, not comfort. Shaq has criticized stars who enjoy success without embracing pressure. Kobe never avoided it. Late-game possessions, defensive matchups, media scrutiny. Kobe leaned into all of it. Even when their relationship was tense, Shaq never questioned Kobe's seriousness about winning. On the court, Kobe also passed one of Shaq's toughest internal tests: adaptability. Early in his career, Kobe was explosive and aggressive. As defenses adjusted, Kobe adjusted back, developing a lethal mid-range game, improving decision-making, and understanding when to control tempo rather than force action. Shaq respects players who evolve instead of repeating what used to work. The championships matter too. Shaq doesn't elevate players who collect stats without validation. 3 straight titles, multiple finals runs. Kobe proved he could win as a co-star, and later proved he could win as the primary force. That arc matters to Shaq, who believes greatness must survive changing roles and expectations. There's also something deeper beneath the resume: competitive alignment. Kobe's intensity matched Shaq's belief that basketball at the highest level is not casual. It's confrontational. It demands edge. Shaq has often said he respected players who took the game personally, and Kobe always did. Not performatively, but fundamentally. Even after their split, Shaq's respect for Kobe only grew. Kobe winning 2 more championships without him confirmed something Shaq already believed. Kobe wasn't just riding success, he was building it. That validation solidified Kobe's place in Shaq's all-time view. In Shaq's framework, Kobe Bryant represents the rare perimeter player who met the same standards Shaq applies to dominant big men: control, accountability, adaptability, and results. That's why Kobe isn't just remembered as a great scorer in Shaq's eyes. He's remembered as a champion who earned everything through work, pressure, and a refusal to back away from the hardest parts of the game.
If your job is to try to be the best basketball player you can be, right? To do that, you have to practice, you have to train, right? You want to train as much as you can, as often as you can.
Larry Bird. When Shaquille O'Neal talks about Larry Bird, the respect comes from something Shaq values deeply but rarely sees: control without intimidation. Shaq dominated games physically. Bird dominated them mentally. That contrast is exactly why Bird earned Shaq's place among the greatest of all time. Shaq has often said that true greatness shows up when opponents know what's coming and still can't stop it. Bird lived in that space. He didn't rely on speed, vertical explosion, or physical advantages. He relied on timing, angles, and decisions made one step ahead of everyone else on the floor. For Shaq, that kind of mastery is just as overwhelming as brute force. What impressed Shaq most about Bird was how little wasted motion there was in his game. Bird didn't force possessions. He didn't hunt highlights. He took what defenses gave him and punished every mistake immediately. Shaq respects players who understand efficiency, not just scoring, but possession control. Bird turned small defensive lapses into momentum swings, and Shaq knows how quickly that breaks teams. Bird also passed a standard Shaq uses to separate great players from legends: competitive honesty. Bird never hid from pressure. He didn't defer responsibility. If the game tightened, Bird demanded the ball and accepted the outcome. Shaq has always criticized players who talk about leadership, but avoid accountability when things go wrong. Bird never did that. Wins and losses belonged to him. Another reason Bird stands high in Shaq's all-time view is his two-way commitment. Bird wasn't an elite defender in the traditional sense, but he was always positioned correctly. He anticipated passing lanes. He rotated early. He communicated constantly. Shaq respects players who understand that defense is about awareness as much as athleticism, and Bird understood that better than most. There's also an element of toughness Shaq admires. Bird played through pain, through physical games, through constant trash talk, and often initiated it himself. But unlike many players, Bird backed everything up with execution. Shaq has said that confidence without results means nothing. Bird's confidence always came with consequences for the opponent. Championships matter too. 3 titles, 3 straight MVPs. Finals performances where Bird didn't just score, but stabilized entire games. Shaq doesn't elevate players based on aesthetics or nostalgia. He elevates them based on impact. Bird's teams didn't just win. They functioned at a higher level because of him. In Shaq's framework, Larry Bird represents a different type of dominance, not physical intimidation, but inevitability through precision. He didn't overpower defenders. He outthought them, outtimed them, and outlasted them. That's why Bird earns Shaquille O'Neal's respect among the greatest ever. Because in a league built on strength, Bird proved that intelligence, discipline, and competitive clarity could be just as devastating and just as championship level.